Alright mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another IMO, and today, in my opinion, I think it was the right decision for Chelsea to let Jose Mourinho go. And here's why. Now, first things first, I should say, I'm not one of these people that's in favour of managers being sacked left, right and centre, and I'm not saying that it was fair on Mourinho that he got sacked. But that doesn't stop it being the right decision for Chelsea Football Club. You see, the simple case is this. Jose Mourinho's players, the Chelsea boys, they stopped playing for him. I don't know why, I don't know how. There's rumours as to why it's happened, but essentially, the Chelsea players were not playing for their manager. They weren't doing the things they asked him to do. They lost faith in him. And it's an old cliche in football, but when a manager loses the dressing room and they won't play for him anymore, that situation becomes untenable. It cannot be fixed. Now, I'm not saying it's Jose Mourinho's fault necessarily that he's lost his dressing room. I think the players deserve a lot of stick. I think the players should ultimately be criticised and are the ones to blame. They're not performing. They're not justifying their ridiculous wage bills and their huge transfer values. However, you've got to look at it from a Chelsea ownership perspective. It's a lot cheaper to replace their manager than half their squad, okay? Financially speaking, this is the right decision to do because at the end of the day, let's say another manager comes in. The big rumour is going to be that Gus Hiddink is going to come in as interim manager. Let's say he comes in and he starts, getting some results and going up the table because there's a lot of places above them to go. Then those players' transfer values are going to start to go back up again. Because right now, let's say in January they had stuck by Mourinho and they'd said, no, you know what, it's Hazard we need to get rid of, it's Matic, it's all these underperforming players, Diego Costa that clearly don't want to be here. We'll sell them, we'll replace them. They wouldn't have got good money for those players off the back of the performances they've put in this season. Well, at the end of last season, they probably could have sold Hazard for 60 million. Player of the year in the Premier League, Real Madrid, someone would have come in for him, if there was an opportunity to sell, if they wanted to sell. However, now, you'd be lucky to get 30 million for him on the current form because it's a big risk to take someone. I've got no doubt that Hazard will refine that form. I've got no doubt that he's a world-class player. He's a Belgian after all. However, right now, a club would be silly to come in and pay 50, 60 million for Hazard. They need to see his form improve. The same can be said for Diego Costa, the same for Matic, the same for a lot of the players that aren't justifying their wage bills right now. However, to get rid of Mourinho, you make a deal with them, you pay off his contract, you meet in the middle, it's one payment, okay, then another payment to bring in the manager to replace him, but that manager may get the best out of those players again because Mourinho wasn't doing it. I do think with the Mourinho sacking, it's a case of history repeating itself a little bit. Not just Mourinho leaving Chelsea after 3 years, but Mourinho generally leaving his jobs after 3 years. He tends to do it a lot. He tends to get bored or something isn't right, but I wouldn't say this really is a case of the 3-year itch with Mourinho because normally he seems like he's bored of the challenge and he wants to move on. I don't think he wanted to leave Chelsea at this point, and when he does leave a club, he doesn't leave them in these sort of dire straits. Never has he left a club in a relegation battle before. This is definitely a first for Jose Mourinho. And the other case that you could say is history repeating itself is the fact that Gus Hiddink is probably going to come in as the interim manager to replace Mourinho, and he did this before when he came in to replace Scolari. Also at Chelsea. But if you take it back to the season that Mourinho had at Chelsea, you could say he's still in the Champions League. Yes, he's playing PSG, that could be difficult, but the squad is good enough to beat PSG on a good day. They're not going to get top 4 in the Premier League, I don't think, but they could still finish maybe in a Europa League spot in the Premier League. I think that's achievable if they turn their form around. I don't think Mourinho was going to do that though. It was a case now of every single game they lose between now and the new year and February, whenever. It just makes it harder and harder for them to come back. They couldn't afford to keep dropping points. What it does do, this Mourinho-Chelsea situation, is it makes David Moyes' Man United situation look a lot better because, David Moyes took over the champions and he was criticised heavily for making them finish 7th the next year. Jose Mourinho has stayed in charge of the champions and he's taken them down to a relegation battle. I don't think they're going to finish around there in the table, but we're halfway through the season now pretty much, and that is where they are. David Moyes was also known to have inherited a team that many people felt was not a complete Man United team, a team that had a mixture of youth that hadn't reached potential yet and older ageing legs. There was weaknesses in the squad, there was areas that needed improvement. But Jose Mourinho was staying in charge of a very good Premier League winning team. There was no question marks about that Chelsea team at the end of the season. A lot of people tipped them to win the league again this year. Before the season kicked off, they were many people's favourites along with Man City. So it is truly incredible the collapse they've had. And for me, something has to have gone on behind the scenes. There was a lot of talk with this whole Dr. Eva Carneiro situation, with something more going on there between maybe her and some of the players, or Mourinho and her and the players not agreeing with the way he treated her. One thing that's always been a case in Mourinho's clubs when he's managed them is that he has this kind of aura about him where the players fall in love with him. You know, Inter Milan when he left, I think it was Materazzi was practically crying on the floor. Essien, I remember when Essien went on loan from Chelsea to Real Madrid and he was reunited with Mourinho there. He said something like, "I can't wait to see my daddy again." They love him. Players fall in love with Mourinho. The Mourinho effect is that they want to please him so much, they'll do whatever he says. But that effect was well and truly gone at Chelsea this season. The players weren't enjoying playing under him. They weren't looking up to him anymore. They didn't want to do the things he asked them to do. And that is just a situation that cannot go on at any football club, despite the fact that Jose Mourinho is Chelsea's best manager of all time. He's one of the best managers in general of all time. That doesn't mean that he's still not capable of being in a situation that will not work. And for that reason, I do think it was the right decision to get rid of Jose Mourinho. The really interesting thing now is what's going to happen next. Where's Mourinho going to go? Could we see him replace LVG at Man United? Would he do that to Chelsea? Does he feel like he's been, betrayed by Chelsea and Abramovich? Mourinho wanted to build this legacy this time. He didn't want a 3-year job. He said he wanted to be there for the long haul. That's been taken away from him now, whether it's his own fault or not. Does he feel betrayed? Does he want to go and manage a rival team now? Like, Man United. Could he go back to Real Madrid to replace Benitez? With Chelsea's situation, yes, Hiddink might come in as an interim manager, but who's going to be there for the long haul? Because Hiddink's come off the back of some pretty unsuccessful manager jobs, most recently in the Netherlands. Perhaps Guardiola, if he is going to leave Bayern Munich, which looks like he may at the end of the season, there's going to be one of the most sensational bidding wars for a manager of all time. Like, we've seen it done for footballers before, but I don't think we've ever seen it done for a manager on this scale. If he does leave Bayern Munich, you're going to probably have Man United, Man City and Chelsea after him, and that's just English clubs, despite other options that could be open to the Spaniards. So that's going to be a really interesting situation to see what happens there. But I think overall, Chelsea, as much as it hurts to see such an enigmatic and charismatic manager like Mourinho leave Chelsea and leave the league, he wasn't the same this year. He was less of the special one and more the grumpy one, constantly complaining, getting in trouble with the officials. I was at the West Ham game and we beat them and he got sent to the stands and he was barging in the ref's room complaining. Ultimately, I think Chelsea made the right decision and it's interesting to see what happens with them next. I want to hear from you guys though. Leave me a comment below. Do you think Mourinho should have been sacked? Not just Chelsea fans, football fans in general. Do you think it was the right decision? I know a lot of Chelsea fans are hurt to see the special one go, but I do think it was for the right reasons that he has left. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this IMO episode, make sure you drop a like on it, subscribe for more. I'll see you next time. But until then, don't go changing.